Hello guys, and welcome to my retrospective review of Hollow Knight. Now when I first played this game, I will be honest, I was afraid to play it at first. I know it's a bit of a darker game, and I wasn't sure if I would enjoy it or not, but nonetheless, I decided to play it anyway. This game taught me something during one of the darker periods of my life. Hollow Knight is a story built around tragedy, a kingdom in decline, people clinging to what was once a desperate struggle to prevent the inevitable. Many people will walk away from this game with different interpretations, but this is what I took from it. The game taught me sometimes it's more painful to hold on to things than to rather let it go. For a long time I held on to people and memories and events that have already passed. I carried them with me everywhere I went, convinced that if I was just holding on a little bit longer, something would change. But just like Hollow Nest, things that are kept beyond their time can begin to decay. Throughout the game, we see characters desperately trying to preserve what they've lost. The result isn't salvation, it's rather suffering, and while my own life is obviously very different from a fallen kingdom plagued by an infection, I understand that feeling. Eventually, when I played the game more and more and progressed through, I realized that everything has a beginning and an end. Relationships end, chapters of our lives end, sometimes dreams end, and no matter how much we wish otherwise, we can't always stop that from happening. What Hollow Knight taught me wasn't that loss hurts any less. It taught me that accepting an ending can sometimes be healthier than trying to fight endlessly against it. In the game, there's a famous character that is known as the Pale King. The Pale King's mistake wasn't that he cared too much for what he built, but it was the fact that he just couldn't let go. Every decision he made was an attempt to preserve Hollow Nest, to keep the kingdom alive no matter the cost, and in doing so, he helped create the very tragedy he was trying to prevent. The Pale King is arguably one of the most tragic figures in Hollow Knight, because nearly everything he did was motivated by a desire to save his kingdom, yet many of those actions ultimately contributed to his downfall. So, who exactly led this charge in the kingdom's downfall? From the lore, the Radiance wasn't just a monster invading Hollow Nest. She was an ancient god who had once been worshipped by the Moth tribe. When the Pale King arrived and built Hollow Nest, many of the kingdom's inhabitants abandoned Radiance and turned their loyalty toward him. Over time, she was forgotten. I'm assuming that this sparked some sort of jealousy in Radiance, and the problem was that she didn't want to be forgotten. When she began reappearing through dreams and memories, the infection spread throughout Hollow Nest, and the Pale King recognized the threat and began searching for a solution. His answer was the creation of the vessels. This is where the tragedy becomes much darker. The Pale King and the White Lady created countless offspring and cast them into the abyss. Their goal was to create a being completely empty of thought, desire, and emotion and will, something the Radiance could not influence. Out of countless discarded children, one was chosen, the Hollow Knight. The Pale King's solution wasn't to defeat Radiance directly, it was to sacrifice unimaginable numbers of lives in the hope of creating a perfect container for her. And for a short period of time, it worked. The Hollow Knight successfully sealed the Radiance away, but the plan had a flaw. The Hollow Knight wasn't truly hollow. Now, this part is entirely left up to speculation, whether it was affection from the Pale King, a sense of identity, or simply an impossibility of creating a completely empty being. Something remained inside the Hollow Knight. That tiny imperfection was enough for the Radiance to eventually break free. In the end, he cared deeply about Hollow Nest. His downfall came from believing that he could completely control an uncontrollable situation. The more he tried to force a perfect solution, the more sacrifices were required. Entire sections of Hollow Nest were abandoned. The abyss became a graveyard. The kingdom's future was placed on the shoulders of a single impossible plan. And this is where you, as the knight, comes into play. The Pale King spent his entire life searching for a perfect vessel, but perhaps the lesson is that perfection was never possible. The Hollow Knight wasn't perfect. The Knight probably isn't perfect either. Yet one failed and the other succeeded. Maybe the answer wasn't emptiness. Maybe it was accepting imperfection. Another thing I wanted to touch on, because this had a huge impact on me during my gameplay, was definitely the different biomes throughout the game. I know that people probably have went to different areas during their gameplay, but we'll just start with Dirtmouth just to keep it simple. So Dirtmouth gives off this feeling of loneliness and quiet reflection. When you first arrive in Dirtmouth, there's almost nothing there. The music is soft and melancholic, the town is nearly abandoned, and the wind blows through empty buildings. Instead of feeling lively and safe like most towns, Dirtmouth just feels lonely, maybe even peaceful. When I first arrived at Dirtmouth, I just sat at the bench and thought for a moment. For someone dealing with loss, that atmosphere can hit surprisingly hard. One of the very first characters that you meet in the game is a character called the Elderbug. When you interact with the Elderbug, he does warn you about the well. When you first meet him in Dirtmouth, he advises you to be careful, explaining the creatures who go down into the well tend to turn mad and lose their minds. When he explains this, it only adds more to the feeling of hopelessness and loneliness and loss of hope. But nonetheless, we carry on. We eventually make our way down the well to Forgotten Crossroads. The Crossroads is a mysterious location, but not yet oppressive. You're discovering Hollownest for the first time. There's danger, but also excitement. The area feels like the beginning of adventure. It's filled with questions, but not enough answers. The next location I went to was Greenpath, and this location is a complete 180 of where I left off, and arguably one of the biggest emotional shifts in the game. After the gray and brown tones of Crossroads, suddenly you're surrounded by bright greens and flowing vegetation. The music feels more alive, and the area almost feels like nature reclaiming what civilization left behind. Many players describe reaching Greenpath as the moment they fell in love with the game, and I can't lie, I couldn't agree more. From there, I moved on to Fungal Wastes, and I had a feeling of uncertainty and almost weird-like feeling, like I didn't belong. The mushrooms, the strange creatures, and bizarre movement patterns created an uncomfortable feeling. Not necessarily fear, more like being somewhere that I just generally didn't belong. From there, I knew that Hollownest is larger and stranger than it first appeared. And I gotta be honest here for a second, one of my favorite enemies to fight in this game was the Fungoons. Those things are just hilarious, and they look stupid and goofy. And they just sit there and go, "Ooh." I love that. That was like a what the fuck moment for me. Unfortunately, from here, things get a little darker. After moving on from the Fungal Waste, I went to the City of Tears, and this place just gives off a sense of grief. The constant rain, the towering empty buildings, the beautiful piano soundtrack. Knowing that this was once the heart of a thriving kingdom, everything about the City of Tears just feels sad. Not tragic in an explosive way, but just quietly sad. Like walking through the memory of something that used to be beautiful. This is often the moment players realized Hollownest isn't just dangerous, it's dead. After exploring in the City of Tears for a little while, I moved on to the Crystal Peaks, and this place gave me a feeling of obsession over wealth, and not in the healthy way either. The bright pink crystals are beautiful but overwhelming. The miners continue digging even after becoming visibly infected. Everything here feels consumed by a single purpose. It's a visual representation of obsession over wealth. Moving on, we go to Deep Nest, and there's only one word for this place: fear. Deep Nest is probably one of the most obvious emotional biomes. Darkness, unpredictable enemies, narrow tunnels, and constant feeling something is watching you. And eventually, something is watching you, and it's one of the enemies you fight in the game, but I won't spoil it for you. In this biome, the game strips away your sense of comfort and control. In this part of the game, it gives you a feeling that makes your skin crawl, and the enemies are genuinely terrifying. It really says, just turn around and don't come back. Jesus fucking Christ. Bitch, you fucking scared me. Get the fuck out of here. Her voice is kind of attractive, I'm not gonna lie though. Hey mama, how's it going? Hey, whoa, 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 calm down, calm down, calm down, calm down. Hey, it's not that big of a deal. Like, chill, bro, come on. Fuck you, nasty bitch. Kingdom's Edge is the next place you encounter, and I would like to say that this place gives off a feeling of acceptance. Kingdom's Edge feels like the edge of a dream. The falling ash creates a haunting atmosphere, and you're literally standing on the border of a dying kingdom. By this point, you're no longer discovering Hollownest, you're understanding it. Something that really irked me, though, was that bugs were falling from the sky. So my curiosity got the best of me, and I began to climb. Eventually, you reach the Colosseum of Fools. Here you battle it out with bugs all throughout Hollownest for glory. I think this area represented rage and hatred, but also a sense of honor, but without purpose. What are you fighting for? The rewards that are given to you are generally helpful, yes, but what is the point in the end? While fighting in this Colosseum, I began to feel a sense of pointlessness while the crowd cheers for me at the end of each round. And before you go here, I would highly recommend bringing some of your best charms and your best loadout for this, because you're going to be fighting for a while. But I won't lie though, I looked pretty badass. Totally didn't enjoy any of that whatsoever. I was bored and I left. Yeah. Also, I'm so sorry that you had to sit through that and watch that. If you wanted, you could have skipped it and went to the rest of the video. Anyway, yeah. I'll make sure to leave a timestamp in the description so that way you guys can skip it. Eventually, I moved on from this place and I decided to leave. I don't know why, but I just felt like that this was all pointless, so I just moved on. From there, I decided to make it my mission to delve deeper into Hollownest, because really the only way was down, right? And then I found myself in one of the darkest places in Hollownest, the Abyss. The Abyss isn't so much scary as it is horrifying, because it's where the game's biggest lie falls apart. Here you meet many of your brothers and sisters as fallen vessels. The blackness and the silence and endless discarded vessels force the player to confront the cost of the Pale King's plan. And it's where the tragedy becomes undeniable. It was at this moment I didn't realize how much the world itself was affecting me. The loneliness of Dirtmouth, the hope of Greenpath, the grief of City of Tears, and the darkness of the Abyss all felt different stages of something I was already experiencing in my own life. Hollownest wasn't just a place I explored. It became a reflection of emotions I was struggling to put into words. By the end of this, it got me thinking. Maybe the developers experienced some of these things in their own lives and have ran into tragedies of their own. And I'll be honest, I can sympathize, but at the same time, these are things that we just have to deal with in our own lives on a constant basis. That said, I'm still playing this game to this day, and there are a lot of areas that I haven't explored quite yet. And this is where this game thrives. From the moment you descend into Hollownest, the game constantly encourages your curiosity. Every new room, every new pathway, and every suspicious wall invites a simple question: what's over there? Unlike many modern games that place markers on everything, Hollow Knight trusts the player to find their own path. Sometimes that path leads to a powerful charm, and sometimes it leads to a hidden boss. Sometimes it leads to a piece of lore that completely changes your understanding of the world. Even after multiple playthroughs, there were areas I completely missed the first time around. Entire sections of Hollownest existed right under my nose, hidden behind breakable walls, obscure routes, or paths I simply never thought to explore. What makes exploration in Hollow Knight so memorable isn't just the rewards. It's the feeling of not knowing what's around the next corner. Every new biome feels like opening a door to another world. The game is constantly introducing new environments, enemies, characters, and mysteries. Just when you think you've seen everything in Hollownest has to offer, you stumble across another secret and realize there's still more to uncover. Looking back, I think a sense of curiosity in my own life was what kept me moving forward. In a strange way, the game rewarded me for continuing forward. Not because it promised that everything would be okay, I know that, but because there was always something new beyond the darkness. I will be honest, when I first played Hollow Knight, I thought I was going to be playing as this little character who's really cute and adorable and has a little sword with him and he goes around and fights stuff. But what I didn't realize when I started playing it is that I was going to be exploring parts of myself: fear, grief, sadness, curiosity, acceptance, and truth, and ultimately learning how to let go. Hollownest is a world defined by loss, a kingdom desperately trying to preserve what can no longer be saved. Characters clinging to memories, dreams, and ideals long after they've begun to crumble. And in many ways, I understand that feeling more than I want to admit. This game helped me to confront something I had been struggling with for a long time: the fact that not everything is meant to last forever. Some relationships end, some dreams change, some chapters of our lives close whether we like it or not. And as painful as that can be, there comes a point where holding on hurts more than letting go. But Hollow Knight isn't just a story about endings, it's also a story about moving forward. Despite the decay, despite the tragedy, despite the countless failures of those who came before, the knight continues deeper into Hollownest. It keeps exploring, it keeps searching, and it keeps moving forward. And maybe that's why this game resonated with me so much, because even in a kingdom built on loss, there was always another path waiting to be discovered. Hollowness taught me that everything has a beginning and an end, but it also taught me that ending isn't always something to fear. Sometimes an ending is simply what makes room for whatever comes next. And for that reason, Hollow Knight will always be more than just a game to me. No, really, this game will forever hold a deep spot in my heart because it really did help me to get through some of the toughest points in my life. While I was at work, I would always think about coming home and playing this game and exploring more of the biomes and getting some of the charms and the notches and upgrading my nail and beating the next boss and fighting different enemies, and it was all very interesting, and I really enjoyed this. So if you guys enjoyed it just as much as I do, let me know down in the comments section how you felt about the game, and leave a like and subscribe. You guys have a great day.